And then we sold the company. It was not the way that I ever thought it would turn out, but it was like the exact right thing, certainly for me. We ended up selling the business and we had bought an investment property upstate and we sold both of those things. The company was growing really, really, really quickly and we were out there. And so bankers had always been calling me. So exit means a lot of things. And sometimes it means it's super planned and it's super like whatever. It's always the way you thought it would be. And sometimes it's what the universe just really happened in store for you. Making it the best it could be is also kind of how it goes sometimes.
She just sold her company. She sat in a room full of men negotiating the biggest deal of her lifetime. Wait, she sold for how much? I can't even believe she managed to get double her valuation. Let's keep this just between us.
Welcome, Ruthie, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about this stuff. It really gets me going.
Me too. And you know what? We're like sisters from another mister. We both built agencies. We both sold in 2021. So I can't wait to get into this chat because I need to know, like, was I alone in my experience or not? So I need to hear your whole story. So tell me about how the participation agency started. Give me like your background and lead up to that moment.
Sure. I started my entrepreneurial journey very young, like in my early 20s. I started a couple of different businesses that got a lot of press but didn't make a lot of money. And then I went to NYU Business School to get an MBA and met somebody through the marketing organization there who we got along really well. And I hired her to be a consultant on some of my stuff that I was doing. And then after school, she was like, I'm starting this agency. Why don't you come on and become a partner? And so experiential was never really like my dream, but I was really swept up into the building of this business. And it was like the best actual business school I could have ever asked for or wanted. And I was the CEO of that company for about 10 years. We pioneered a lot of things in the experiential space, so long, like specifically long form experiential. So we had programs running every single day for years, as opposed to like pop-ups or shorter term things. And right up until COVID hit, we were doing, I don't know, like 13, 15 million a year. And then COVID hit. And then we'll get into a different part of the story. But it was really interesting to also run an events agency in the middle of a global pandemic. And my clients were really the biggest companies in the world. And to kind of like navigate that with them and for them and through them and then go into an exit was a really very fascinating time in my life.
Okay, so before we get to the exit, which I can't wait to get to, getting to 8 figures of revenue as an agency is no small feat. It's challenging. It's difficult. What was, if you're looking back, what was either the one thing or the few things that really attributed to your ability to capture that kind of scale?
It's a good question. And this is like such a long time ago. So it's funny to have to like open up that part of my brain. And now I think a couple of things. I mean, I think now I'm a coach for female entrepreneurs. So the coaching part of me is going to say that like, you just have to know when you're like outgrowing your first batch of clients, like the clients that we built the company off of at the beginning, we realized pretty early on, we're only ever going to spend a certain amount of money with us because for whatever reason, they have us in a certain box in their minds. And once we decided to really bust through that, we kind of busted through that, right? So there's, I don't know, for all of your listeners who do client work, like every couple of years, I feel like there's like a client clearing and you can up level should you wish and choose and take action on that. So that's one thing is just like deciding, right? A second more practical thing was this kind of switch to a lot of experiential agencies will do like smaller projects, right? Like your multi 6-figure projects that are these like more like pop-ups or these month-long or whatever. But we were able to really lock in these kind of like never-ending contracts with these massive companies. And we provided like a huge, huge, huge value to them. And so that was a thing that like really catapulted us was just taking this concept and being like, we're actually not going to do things that are so finite. We're going to create this entire new way of activating your brand, where we would like take over space and like sign like 3-year leases on this space for a client and just get it going every day and then prove how valuable it was for them. And then that program would grow within their company exponentially, and it became something we would do globally for them, and this version and this version. And I have a couple of different examples of that. So that's like practically what happened. And then we really we had our kind of like cash cow, like 2 major clients, and we're able to really like grow team and grow business. And we went, whether or not this was like the right thing to do in hindsight as a business builder, we went very deep with those handful of clients. And so we turned a handful of clients into, I had one client who was half my revenue every year, which, $6.5 million in the years leading up to COVID, just from one client. So again, like, would I do that again? Probably not. But did it work out for the building of that business? It did. And that client is still with the people who acquired the agency. And, we really just got in, we got in good.
You got in deep there. Yeah. So focusing on the depth, maybe not, if it wasn't this, if you had to do it again, maybe it wouldn't be the same concentration, but just really focusing on that depth. Okay. Yeah. So experiential agency, COVID hits.
Yeah.
Did you decide to sell before? Were you thinking about exit?
Yeah.
COVID hitting. Talk to me about where that came into play, or was it like COVID hit, I have to sell immediately?
No, it wasn't that. I'm going to actually tell the story briefly because many of your listeners might think it's interesting, because some people do. So just even back up for a second. The idea was always to sell, because we did experiential, like our EBITDA wasn't necessarily in ratio to our revenue, because we had a lot of hard costs, right? So like we were always working on growing the business and growing the profitability of the business so that we could capture like a very, very large exit. Like that was always the plan. And then my ex-husband moved out March 1st of 2020. March 15th of 2020, I went into lockdown with my twins, who were 5 at the time and didn't know how to like read or tell time. I mean, their dad was living very close by, so we were in lockdown basically together. And then this business that I just spent a decade building kind of was like mostly put on hold overnight. And then 2 weeks after that, my former business partner and I had a rupture that was irreparable. And so I basically spent the next year transitioning the business into a digital agency, and then we sold the company. So it was not the way that I ever thought it would turn out, but it was like the exact right thing, certainly for me. And we ended up selling the business, and we had bought an investment property upstate, and we sold both of those things. And that I'm saying it like that part happened quick. That part was like 2 years. Okay. But these bankers had always been calling me because the company was growing really, really, really quickly. And I was always on those lists, right? Like the Inc. 500, the Inc. 5000. I, as a CEO, had gotten a lot of recognition, and we were out there. And so bankers had always been calling me. And then it got to a point, and I'm being very honest, and on your podcast, because exit means a lot of things. And sometimes it means it's super planned and it's super like whatever. It's always the way you thought it would be. And sometimes it's what the universe just really had in store for you. And taking that and making it the best it could be is also kind of how it goes sometimes. And for me, like when that happened, I was like, oh, this is the universe like pushing me off of a cliff into what's next. And like, again, turning all of the assets into digital assets. And to be honest, during the year of COVID, like I had said, we had gone really deep with like 1 to 2 massive clients, like literally the biggest companies in the world. I transitioned it into a digital company, and I actually signed on more blue chip clients during COVID, like quantity wise, than I had ever signed on before. Goldman Sachs, Sequoia Capital, like every big brand I was able to sell in projects to, but the numbers were different. I had been selling $2 million projects, and now I was selling $300,000 projects. It just was very different. And so it gave me time and space to also, just on a personal level, get really clear on what my next move would be. Like we could have I thought about like buying her out. I thought about like doing all these other things. And then once I actually did the deal, my clients wanted me to be direct to contract with them. And I was like negotiating those contracts, and the clients were saying yes to everything I wanted. And my body was literally like, you are done with this chapter of your life. And so it wasn't just an exit from the business, it was like a real true exit from that entire chapter of my life. But on the flip side of it is like I got a bidding war on an events agency in the middle of the fucking global pandemic because that's how good of a salesperson I am. I really ran that entire show because I know how to like my expertise and my magic is positioning, pitching, and sales. And so I was really able to take like everything we had done and sell the business on the promise of all the big contracts coming back, which I knew they would. And I was in conversation with the clients, and I feel really, really good about like who I transitioned the clients to. Like I wanted to make sure everybody was in good hands. I just knew for me, I had to go.
So you were ready for an entirely new chapter. We had obviously just went through a divorce, going through a bad situation with the partner, COVID, all of it. Your entire body is telling you it's time, and you're great at positioning. And somehow you managed to get a bidding war for an experiential agency at that time. So it sounds like you focused on that the contracts were going to return, that it was a steady, good, the pivot to digital probably helped a lot, because I was thinking also like, even though they're smaller, the cost of goods probably weren't as much because you're not doing these live events. So you're bringing in these new clients that you could eventually do live events with. Probably very, very smart and profitable, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I think, sure, theoretically, had they been nurtured that way,
Yeah.
I think at that point, it was sort of just like keep the ship afloat as much as humanly possible,
survive.
and survive. Yeah, but yeah, and I made inroads, I made contacts, and also like this idea of these like long form experiential spaces. I was queuing up these digital clients, but also like selling that to them really for post COVID. Yeah, it would have all worked out. I mean, and honestly, in hindsight, if we had even just like, I mean, it's so long ago at this point, who even knows? But our CFO was like, you could just pause for a year and like chill and like not.
We're done. You just said your body's telling you done. You're done. Okay, so you go in, and how do you hire an investment banker? How do you negotiate the
Yeah. So like I said, there were people always calling us for years. So I always knew this was going to happen. So the first person I hired didn't work out. He was, because the positioning that we were in also, it's like, you had to be a great fucking salesperson to really do this deal. Right. And like, if you're not the person who really understands the magic, and like our company was magic. I mean, we were a 7-person agency when Apple became our client. Like that doesn't happen. Like our company was really, really, really magical in a lot of ways. And like, I understood that. And so the first guy didn't end up working out, which was fine. It was like a smaller firm, but pretty quickly on, it was like, you're not the guy. And then I ended up going with a bigger firm who really, what they did was really brought leads. And then I honestly took it over from there. So, and I want to share this with everybody because I think because I am a salesperson and a marketer and all of those things, I really understood the potential. And I also saw, like, I just spent a decade being the face and pitching, right? And so I understood how these conversations really, really needed to go. And I saw that like the collateral they were putting together and the way that they were positioning the business, it wasn't right. And so I was smart enough, or I don't know, smart enough is the word. I trusted them for what I decided to trust them about, which is the leads and the structure and the process. And then I trusted myself enough to go in and be like, that's not right. That's not going to cut it. I need to take over here. And so that's really what happened. And that's what I did. So like we got a bunch of leads in the door. I did, a bunch of preliminary, all the ways it goes. I know it's like so long ago. It's like, remember, but, then I really, then we went into due diligence with a couple of different businesses, and 2 of them, and the one that I ended up choosing was the one that I knew would be a better fit for my clients. I really truly wanted and needed to look them in the face and say, I'm leaving. You will be in great hands. And so I chose the team that I knew would take care of them in the way that they deserved to be taken care of.
Was it less money than the other offer? And you chose it?
No, it was the same. And to be honest, because of the positioning of the agency, like a lot of the, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say or not say, but a lot of it sort of came on the back end of the sale, which made sense, right? Like,
yes.
it honestly, like, and they're not going to hear this. It was so long ago, but the COO of the other company got on the phone with me and was so obnoxious.
Yeah.
It was like, I would never put you in front of these clients who I have just spent years cultivating heart-centered, like true relationships with. Like, these are people who like I knew about their kids and they knew about my kids and like, they still check in with me and I still check in with them. Like, we're friends. And I would never have. And that was like, we had gone through and then they put me on the phone with this one guy and I was like, your guys are out of the running. And they were like, we want back in. And I was like, I could never.
That's hysterical. You talked about how with most agencies, it's this way that, you don't get all the money up front. You have to sort of earn it out over time. And I would imagine that one of the upside of you sort of running the process is that you're the best there is. And the downside of you running the process is that I would think you would be inextricably linked to that sale and they want you because of how magical you are. Is that the case?
I just got in front of that.
Yeah.
Like I got in front of that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew exactly what I was doing.
Did you have to stay with the company after you sold or no?
I stayed for six months.
Ah, wonderful.
Yeah. And it was easy and fine. And it was 6 months. But after 6 months, it's when I was like, thinking about maybe staying on longer. And I was like, pay me more money and do it exactly this way. And I need the contracts to look like this. And they were like, okay. And then I was like, sorry, no, bye. Oops.
Got it. No, it's amazing that you were but were you able to extract the value on the back half? Were you able to get what was needed without staying there?
I definitely made a choice. I would have gotten more had I stayed longer, but I literally was like, I'm just done. And then I started another business and honestly captured a lot of revenue that first year. Like, I knew it was going to be okay. I was not. So the reason I sort of mentioned this story in context of all of those things happening at once is because, and I'm assuming a lot of your listeners are female. And so I'll even just give it the context of like, my marriage was like a 3-year slow roll to the death. Mm-hmm. And so when this thing happened with the business really abruptly between COVID happening and my former partner and I really getting clear that we needed to not be together work together anymore. That part happened really fast. And I woke up at like 3 a.m., like 48 hours later, and I was literally like, this is the universe pushing me off of a cliff into a higher level of consciousness. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And it's scary, but I understand what's happening here. There's a new plan for me and I just have to go with it. And so again, fast forward a year and a half or whatever, however long it took to do the deal and finish the 6 months and whatever, or it's like, I definitely made a very proactive choice to walk away. Like, I could still, if I wanted to be there today, I could be there today, capturing a ton of revenue for myself for honestly what would be very little but very easy work. But I made a choice and I chose me. And the nice thing about being a successful entrepreneur and having really put myself through the boot camp of CEO-ness is that I trust me and I just do. And I know how to spin up wealth out of thin air.
Right.
And I trust that about myself. And so it was not worth it for me to stay for the extra money on the back end because my well-being and my knowing was stronger than that. And I had enough, obviously, your
body told you.
And my body told me it also, my bank accounts were fine and it was fine.
Right. It was enough to feel safe enough You knew that you would be able to always earn money. You had that within you. You knew that. And this chapter was over.
Chapter was over. And to be honest, now, like the business that I've now started, I'm now a coach for other female entrepreneurs. I'm about to launch a big offer all around exit strategy because I don't think women really think that they can exit. I think that whether or not you sell with an exit or you like just want freedom in your business, you have to build it as if you're going to exit. Like there's all of these things. And again, like because I'm such a positioning, framing, sales expert, like the way that I do exits with my clients is really awesome and beautiful and fun and juicy. But all that aside, the business that I'm building now is an internet education business where if you crack these codes on making money on the internet, it's actually limitless revenue potential and you can actually make money while you sleep. Whereas an agency, it's very different. The way you're holding clients is different. I mean, in the agency style that I had, it was very different.
All agencies.
So yeah. And so, personally, like I am a coach, but I have coaches. My coaches are much younger than me who've cracked these internet codes and they're making $1 million a month with like 90% profit margin.
Yeah.
Is amazing. Yeah. So like that's the business that I'm building now is so much more in line with my superpowers, my gifts, my talents, my own soul alignment, how I can be best of service to people, but also the numbers make more sense too. And so for me personally, on a personal level, it's such like a win-win-win.
So had you stayed and chased that last bit of earnout, you would be removing yourself from this direction, which sounds like it is more fulfilling, more profitable, and just bringing you joy.
Yeah. And I call myself like a recovering alpha female. I mean, of course, I'm still very alpha. Like I'm an entrepreneur and a single mom. Like I get all this shit done all the time, but it's like, I really lived that like badass boss persona for a very long time. And it didn't like parts of it align with me for sure. I don't know how spiritual your community is. I'm an Aries sun, 10th house of career. Like career is really important to me. It's always going to be a place where I shine, but like I definitely, it's really true for me that it has to be an expression of my gifts. Right? Like my business, as I say, is like an expression of my like goddess work here on this earth now. And really when I had the agency, like I would sit down and I would be like, how is this aligning with my soul? And like, where do I feel really lit up by this? And I was kind of forcing it. And I kind of always knew that. And now I get to really mold this. I don't have a partner. I don't have full-time employees. I only hire consultants or part-time people as needed. I've really freed myself up from all of these things in the other business that I kind of not had to do, but also had to do. And so for me, the reason why I'm working with women on exit now is for the exit itself, but it's also who are you after? Like that's a part that I feel very called to explore when it's like, what's the edge for an overachiever is actually how do you soften? And what is this next phase of your life? And that whether you retire or you work or whatever, that's actually irrelevant to me at this point. It's like, who are the versions of you that you haven't yet met? That exiting from your business, whether you sell it or you build it so it gives you freedom, actually allows you to meet. That's personally what I'm interested in now in my life. And into both, right? Then I get to do both and hold both because you get to be really in your business and in your thing you've created, but it's also you get to think about all of these other things, right? Like I had twins and went back to work 8 weeks later. I was on red eyes 3 times a month for a fucking decade. Like now I get to build everything back in the image of the woman that I am today, which is smarter, wiser, older, better, more in touch with myself, more in touch with my femininity and who I am.
That is beautiful. And Ruthie, where do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
The best place to get in touch with me is on my Instagram, which is at Ruthie.Schulder. I'm sure you'll link it. I don't have a website. So hit me up on Instagram. I'm very bare bones.
Very bare bones, but I love it. Intentional. And that I wear the love the softening of the edges. Love the whole saying, Ruthie, you are awesome. Thank you for sharing your story.
I wouldn't shoot your ear off too much. I love talking about this stuff.
No, it's beautiful. Beautiful story. Beautiful, beautiful story. Congrats on the exit. Congrats on all of it. Enjoy Costa Rica.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great, darling.